tall. Her pale skin seemed translucent, its fairness accentuated by the cascade of white blonde hair that tumbled about her shoulders. She had stuffed her wimple into the pocket of her habit, and she walked reluctantly beside Mireille, kicking her boots in the mud. The two young women, the youngest nuns at the abbey, were cousins on their mother's side, both orphaned at an early age by a dreadful plague that had ravaged France. The aging Count de Rémy, Valentine's grandfather, had commended them into the hands of the Church, upon his death leaving the sizable balance of his estate to ensure their care. The circumstance of their upbringing had formed an inseparable bond between the two, who were both bursting with the unrestrained, abundant gaiety of youth. The abbess often heard the older nuns complain that this behavior was unbecoming to the cloistered life, but she understood that it was better to curb youthful spirits than to try to quench them. Then, too, the abbess felt a certain partiality to the orphaned cousins, a feeling unusual both to her personality and her station. The older nuns would have been surprised to learn that the abbess herself had sustained from early childhood such a bosom friendship with a woman who had been separated from her by many years and many thousands of miles. Now, on the steep trail, Mireille was tucking some unruly wisps of red hair back under her wimple and tugging her cousin's arm as she tried to lecture her on the sins of tardiness. "If you keep on dawdling, the Reverend Mother will give us a penance again," she said. Valentine broke loose and twirled around in a circle. "The earth is drowning in spring," she cried, swinging her arms about her and nearly toppling over the edge of the cliff. Mireille hauled her up along the treacherous incline. "Why must we be shut up in that stuffy abbey when everything out of doors is bursting with life?" "Because we are nuns," said Mireille with pursed lips, stepping up her pace, her hand firmly on Valentine's arm. "And it is our duty to pray for mankind." But the warm mist rising from the valley floor brought with it a fragrance so heavy that it saturated everything with the aroma of cherry blossoms. Mireille tried not to notice the stirrings this caused in her own body. "We are not nuns yet, thank God," said Valentine. "We are only novices until we have taken our vows. It's not too late to be saved. I've heard the older nuns whispering that there are soldiers roaming about in France, looting all the monasteries of their treasures, rounding up the priests and marching them off to Paris. Perhaps some soldiers will come here and march me off to Paris too, and take me to the opera each night and drink champagne from my shoe. Soldiers are not always so very charming as you seem to think," observed Mireille. "After all, their business is killing people, not taking them to the opera." "That's not all they do," said Valentine, her voice dropping to a mysterious whisper. They had reached the top of the hill, where the road flattened out and widened considerably. Here it was cobbled with flat paving stones and resembled the broad thoroughfares one found in larger towns. On either side of the road, huge cypresses had been planted. Rising above the sea of cherry orchards, they looked formal and forbidding, and like the abbey itself, strangely out of place. "I have heard," Valentine whispered in her cousin's ear, "that the soldiers do dreadful things to nuns. If a soldier should come upon a nun in the woods, for example, immediately takes a thing out of his pants, and he puts it into the nun and stirs it about. And then, when he has finished, the nun has a baby." "What blasphemy!" cried Mireille, pulling away from Valentine and trying to suppress the smile hovering about her lips. "You are entirely too saucy to be a nun, I think." "Exactly what I've been saying all along," Valentine admitted. "I would far rather be the bride of a soldier than a bride of Christ." As the two cousins approached the abbey, they could see the 4 double rows of cypresses planted at each entrance to form the sign of the crucifix. The trees closed in about them as they scurried along through the blackening mist.